Hello and welcome to the Score's second podcast on Monday the 16th of March. We're going to be talking about a fun-packed weekend of sport in Preston here. Preston North End furthered their playoff hopes with a 2-1 victory at Deepdale over Coventry City. There was action for the youth team. The Grasshoppers suffered defeat at home. Our reporters were all around the grounds this weekend. We're going to start by talking about PNE. Rail Mason was there. Rail, how was it?
Yeah, it was a decent game. Started off very scrappy. It was kind of fits and starts really. So Preston were just about worth their win. I think. I don't think they could have argued too much if it had been a draw. But it was a good, solid performance.
Again, we see John Parkin get himself on the score sheet. How's he doing it? He's not. If we look at him, he's not the greatest athlete in the world. What is it about him that keeps getting these goals?
I don't think mobility is his strong point, but he's got a very good touch. So he brings others into play, and he just sort of ambles around really. You know, he strolls into the box, but he often finds a bit of space. Maybe defenders take it for granted that they can, you know, not pay too much attention to him, but he certainly seems to find space, and he'd had a couple of chances up to that point in the game. But his goal was a little bit different. So he was there was a poor kick from the Coventry keeper, and he was put through by Ross Wallace and found himself sort of still 30-35 yards out from goal, but he held off the centre-back really well. Got into the box and ran at the keeper really coolly, and he just seems to have a lot of composure about him. Sort of can play with either foot, and just gets everyone involved, and he is worth his place in the team at the minute, I think, and you can't argue with his goal record, especially at Deepdale. He's constantly popping up with important goals. So,
who else stood out for you at the weekend?
I heard Jamie last week highlight Ross Wallace, and he again he produced another really good performance. He's not the finished article. He still sort of makes the wrong decision at times, but he's very creative. He can beat a man. He's got a great cross on him, and he's quite a tricky player, and he's just got a bit of everything, I think. And at this level, someone that can beat a player is something a bit different. So he stood out, and certainly St Ledger as well. He was very solid at the back. Dealt with everything, often sort of covered for Nolan and Mawani, who took a bit of time to get into the game. They were very good second half, but first half St Ledger was having to do a lot of it on his own. And he was also a real threat going forward. Anytime Preston had a set piece, it was often aimed at St Ledger, and he was the one who put Turner under pressure and when he turned into his own net. St Ledger certainly, I think he won man of the match on the day, and I wouldn't argue with that. I think he offered a lot at both ends of the pitch. So.
We saw Preston go a goal down again, like they did in the midweek draw against Sheffield Wednesday. Obviously, we saw them; they left themselves a bit more time to get back into this. You know, is that sort of quality that we've seen over the season for Preston? Is that something that quite a positive thing for them to come back?
Irvin spoke afterwards. He was asked about it, and he said it's certainly not something they're looking to do going into games. I mean, they don't want to have to go goal behind to force that, but I think it does show character, certainly. I think they were looking the better side early on, and just before Coventry scored, they produced the first real chance of the game. Some great play between Sedgwick and Parkin and Elliott. They really sort of were really looking to get into their stride, and then the goal sort of came from nothing. It was a funny one. Wright popped up in the box, hit it across Lonergan, and I think Morrison, by the looks of it, just managed to get a little touch on it. But they're certainly giving themselves a lot of work to do. But I think after that, it was only Preston controlled the game from that point on, and maybe they are maybe they've become a bit complacent in home games, thinking they've got such a great home record that the goals are just going to come. But certainly, they gave themselves a lot to do. But I think after the goal, they were well worth at least a point, if not the three, and they ended up taking that. So
we've seen a little bit of a wobble over the last few weeks, coinciding with a few injury worries. Is there any new ones over the weekend?
Well, Nicholson didn't look too good as he went off. He charged out of the far post to block a shot after a corner, and he really put his body on the line. Irvin was praising him for that afterwards, but it looks as if I think it was Turner that had the shot on his follow through. He's caught Nicholson in the ribs, And at the time, it looked as if he'd broken his ribs. That's what the medical staff seemed to think. And I've not heard the latest yet, but if it was his ribs, that's obviously not too clever. But it's another blow for Preston. Irvin spoke afterwards of how Davidson's coming back next week, and they had one in and one out, and they can cope with that. But it seems Mweni and Cedric both played their second game back from injury. Both looked to be getting closer to match fitness. Cedric started brightly and then faded. Mweni was kind of the other way. He was a bit shaky to begin with, but then really got into his stride. And it seems just as they get one or two back, one or two go injured again, and it's definitely going to be a worry for them. They've not got the biggest squad, and there's been a lot of demands on some of those players. Some of them have played 90 minutes sort of 3 times a week, it seems, at the moment. It looks as if Davidson will be back next week, but Nicholson will be out for some time, which is definitely a blow. And I think that could be the biggest worry for them, trying to stay around the playoff picture. Will be, can they get enough fit bodies out onto the pitch? Definitely.
Yeah, we're moving on to that playoff question again. The 3 points obviously going to help them towards that again. We saw them pop up into the playoff places and then drop down after Swansea and Cardiff drew over the weekend. Really, the question is, can they hold on? Can they get there?
Again, I heard last week's podcast, and it looked very bleak. Jamie was didn't seem too confident in their chances, and it really is that changeable, I think, week by week. So as you said, they pop into the playoffs, then they drop out again when Cardiff get their point. And I know there's a couple of teams around them. Cardiff certainly have games in hand, and it really is touch and go. I mean, in the interviews afterwards, Irvin made that point. He said, one week it's all positive, the next week it's all negative, and it's really too close to call at the minute. I mean, I personally think they'll just miss out. I think squad wise, with the injuries they've had and with the away record, unless they manage to turn that around, I think the way they're playing away from home and the lack of points, away from Deepdale, it's really going to make it tough for them. And they seem to be relying quite heavily on certain players for goals at the moment. And if it was me, I'd say they'd probably just miss out because of the extra games they've played and because of the injuries. I'd probably think they'd finish around sort of 8th or 7th or 8th. But they've certainly got a chance. And they've certainly, with Saturday's win, I think, with the other teams around them dropping points, to pick up that late goal and those 3 points, I think it's a sort of weekend that they'll look back on if they are to make the playoffs and say, pinpoint that was one of the weekends where we really gave ourselves a chance. But yeah, I'm personally a little bit sceptical of their chances of getting into the playoffs.
Okay, well, we're joined here this morning by a few other of our reporters. I'm interested to get their views on the subject. Guys, can Preston get to the playoffs?
I think so. I think if they keep most of their squad fit, and John Parkin seems to have found his scoring boots, but I think it would help Preston if they could get a few more goals under their belt. And I think if a lot more players contributed, then I think they'd definitely be candidates. But I think Preston are a little bit inconsistent. They're not too good in their away days either, and I think a little bit more consistency, and I definitely think they're candidate.
I think if you look up the top there, not many teams there are being consistent at this moment in time. A lot of teams dropping points, and I think if Preston can continue to win all their home games, then they'll probably stand a very good chance of, it's going to go down to the wire, I think, much like it has in the last couple of seasons, but I think they should be okay.
Yeah, as Ali said, all the teams around the playoffs are dropping points, so if Preston can keep going with the victories, Parkin keeps scoring the goals, then it could be anyone's game at the end of the season.
Okay, Jamie, you were at the game last week. Any change on the matter this week? Can they get there?
I think it's the same situation as last week, to be honest. Rails said a lot about what was going on in the game, and I totally agree with the kind of points that he's making. I think it's going to be a serious fist in the last kind of few weeks, but they just have to go with it and hope that other teams around them drop points.